And we're on. It is the Over Under podcast. Should we take a victory lap, Dan? How'd it go last week?
No, we're not. We're not taking a victory lap. We did very well because look, we've had some bad weeks too. So I think we need to own the fact that we had bad weeks and we haven't had bad weeks. But Joe, I did have to start the pod. Well, I had a suggestion a couple weeks ago before I kind of went through my family shit that I was dealing with. That we start giving out our records for PPs on the podcast. I forgot last week. I was again still dealing with stuff. So here's my question: we had a really good week this week. Do we start it this week and just give out the records of the NFL podcast, the college podcast, and then the show on Saturday? And no, for all those people who are wondering, I'm not going to include Kendra's plays in our plays. I love Kendra. Kendra's a new part of the show, and that's fantastic. Kendra can track her own things if she wants to do that. But Joe, this is the trackers for Joe and I. We've been doing this for a really long time. So, I want you guys to continue listening to the Saturday show. I want you guys to listen to Kendra. I want you guys to like Kendra because she brings something different than Joe and I do. But I'm not going to track her plays. That being said, Joe, the request was to do records before every podcast. So on the college podcast, we would say, "Hey, we did this we did this last week on the podcast." So I think that's where we should start. I know it's unfair because we had a great week, right? We had a really good week in college. So in college, our PPs in college, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we went 5-2 on the podcast. We also hit the double PP, and then Saturday, I gave out Tennessee minus 11.5 and Colorado over. So technically, between the two podcasts, 7-2, including a double winner for us, Joe.
I know I give out the three ways on the show. The three ways went 4-2. I think I lost Iowa State and the Steelers.
Okay. Yeah. So so we're not counting the NFL. We'll do the NFL.
Yeah. So I lost Iowa State.
Okay. So starting next week, that's the other thing is that Joe's three ways I haven't been including into the record. I'm going to start including those into the record starting this week coming up.
And some of those are already the plays that we
correct. Yeah. So if we already gave them out, then we're not going to include them again.
Okay?
But unless we say we are, for instance, I said, hey, I want to add another unit to Baltimore on Saturday. So you and I already had the double. We gave out another unit on Saturday. I gave out another unit. So it was a 3-unit play because you had one, I had one, and then I had another one. It was my favorite NFL play of the season, with or without Deshaun Watson. So, so that basically moving forward, that's what we'll do. We'll start the podcast off. We'll talk about the record from the previous week or whatever sport it is, NFL or college. We'll talk about the record and the PPs, and then we'll move on. So this week, 7-2 between the Saturday show and the college podcast, including one double winner, which I believe was Colorado, who covered that big number.
They covered, and listen, maybe it is an indictment on USC, by the way. Like, listen, Caleb Williams, their offense is loaded. Like, and I like that number 0, the running back. They just give up too many points. It's like they play like a prevent defense. It's weird.
They're just not good.
Yeah, and that might be it too.
Yeah,
but their offense is rolling. So that's if the other team screws up or makes a mistake or turns the ball over, that's probably why USC will win. It's so I want to see how they do going forward here against some of these tougher teams. I know Washington wasn't impressive against Arizona, but I still think they're the most physical team of the Pac-12 teams right now, at least. And then we'll see what happens with Washington State and Oregon State. Well, they already played. I mean, we'll see what happens with those teams down the line. And then we'll see UCLA off a week off, and then Cal with Oregon. You know what I mean? So there's we got a good week this week.
Let's start banging it out. Let's start Wednesday football, baby.
So Wednesday football, you'll see a little bit of a theme. I teased this to Dan before the show, but watch teams on the second of a back-to-back roadie, and that's where Jacksonville State is. Plus 3.5 at Middle Tennessee. Jacksonville State came back and won against San Jose State. So that's really where I'm not sorry, Sam Houston. Sorry about that. Yeah. Right now they're 3.5-point dogs at Middle Tennessee State. That's what I look at, Dan. It's just the spot, but I do think Jacksonville State is the better team, but they're 3.5-point dogs. And they're on the second of a back-to-back on the road, so I would fade that.
Yeah, no. I think the back-to-back road thing only works for Power 5 teams. And well, I'll tell you, and everyone's asking why is that the case? So a lot of these Group of 5 teams, right? They're used to playing back-to-backs as they go play Power 5 teams at the beginning of the year, and they just get scheduled. It gets scheduled to them constantly throughout the year, so they're used to it. So it's not nearly as big of an advantage for a Group of 5 team as it is for Power 5 teams, which is why I don't put too much stock into it. That being said, Jacksonville State didn't deserve to win last week. I thought they were terrible in that game, especially in the first half. Sam Houston moved the ball easily on them. This feels like a Middle Tennessee spot, right? 1-4, laying 3.5. I thought the numbers right. I've been higher in Jacksonville State than I think anyone maybe in the country. I told you how much I love this team beginning of the season. But I think this is a good spot for Middle Tennessee, who I think it just kind of had some tough breaks this year. Obviously played Alabama, Missouri to start the year. Played Missouri super tough. Blew a lead at home versus Colorado State, who's a good team. At least we were pretty high on them, Joe, at the beginning of the year. And then I think Western Kentucky is just a really good Conference USA opponent. I don't know. So I think this is kind of a good spot for them. I think that again, defensively, Jacksonville State maybe regress a little bit, but I lean Middle Tennessee here. Open 5 down to 3.5. Total 51.5. I lean Middle Tennessee. Probably won't end up on this game just in general, but I definitely lean Middle Tennessee. Maybe a second half type play.
All right. This is one I circled, Dan. I'm not. The line already moved, so
Yeah.
I think I was on it. But FIU, New Mexico State. I was leaning 51.5 under. It's already down to 49.5. It's on DraftKings at the moment.
Yeah.
I was leaning under already because they're both slow-paced teams. And I think FIU's schedule has been really soft, despite New Mexico State losing to UMass. Here they are, 6-point favorites. It seems a lot to me. I originally I wanted to take the under at 51.5. It's 49.5. I still lean under. I circled it. I'm going to wait on it for another day or so, but I just think both teams play a slow pace. And I'd go under, but we know about New Mexico State's offense is probably better than FIU's.
Yeah, I think I would lean slightly over here, but I also, again, New Mexico State coming off back road games, which is just, it's a lot. And I think that's kind of what happened to them in the Hawaii game. Now, they did have a bye going into this game, and it's a conference game, so this is going to be different. But you saw the move. This one opened 4 at circa. I think it was probably 4.5. Most places available Monday, and now it's up to 6. I think this is the Mexico State spot. And again, you guys know how high I've been on them. I think this is a really good spot for them. Coming off the bye, I think that, some of the shine has been taken off of FIU a little bit. If Liberty kind of put it to them last week. And, again, they're 0-2 in conference play right now. So I do think that this is kind of a team that, might just be good outside of conference, maybe get some weaker opponents on the road in Mexico State. I think a long road trip, first of all. I think this is a really tough spot for them, a team that just seemingly hasn't gotten it going, couldn't get it going versus Liberty at all. New Mexico State played Liberty much tougher. And so we'll see here. I like the 6. I mean, I'm not there yet. 4, I would have played. 4.5, I probably would have played. 6 is a little bit much for me. If it comes back down, I might end up on New Mexico State here. But yeah, pass for me. I do like both dogs. Do both like favorites on Wednesday though.
All right. This one's also interesting. Well, Sam Houston State Liberty. I don't like the line of 18, but Sam Houston State off an emotional loss now goes on the road to Liberty that's trying to put up points. I don't love the 18. I think Liberty wins, but is there an emotional factor here for Sam Houston where 18 might be the right number in this spot?
I mean, I think points are going to be at a premium in this one. I expect Sam Houston to get back to a little bit what they did defensively earlier in the year. Now, again, they did struggle versus Houston, who I think we saw, can play a little bit last week, and they definitely struggled, later in the game versus Jacksonville State, who decided to air the ball out. I think I look under here, Joe. I just think that this is probably they got to get back to their type of roots thing. The problem is this one got slammed. I mean, it opened 48 at circa. It was 46.5, 47. Now it's 45. I just don't think I'm going to chase the total on this one. Maybe look something live, I guess. But I think points that are premium. I think it might be a little bit too much in that one, Joe. 18.5 just seems like a really big number.
Yeah.
I think I'll pass on this one, especially with Liberty having a couple important games coming up. May just not lay it on thick. And again, same Houston, new to the conference. They got Jacksonville State on the road, new to the conference. Sometimes these conference opponents take it a little bit easier on the other conference opponents, especially because to the newer ones, I should say, because they don't want to make the conference look bad. So I think I know that sounds really silly and it sounds like a stupid angle, but it has happened in the past, and especially look at James Madison, some of the games they played last year. Just look at it. It might not be as big as blow as people think.
All right. This one's a little interesting here because of the status of Bachmeier. But Louisiana Tech is plus 5.5 on a Thursday night at home. Western Kentucky's 1-0 they come to a new conference now. They won last week. It looked convincingly, but it was kind of a struggle. So we know they can score. I hate the 5.5 number. In a way, I kind of lean Louisiana Tech, even without Bachmeier. So I think this is a spot for Louisiana Tech. But I've already been, Dan, I can't bet on Western Kentucky anymore. They've already beat me. And I hate the 5.5 number on the road. So in a way, I lean Louisiana Tech. I'm just not going to ring the bell.
Yeah, really weird game here, man. I honestly would need to see who's starting for La Tech. If it's Turner, I mean, I've seen enough Turner. The kid just isn't nearly as good. He's just not good enough. So I guess I would say I like Western Kentucky here, even with Bachman. I don't know, man. The number's pretty much dead on in the year. It opened 8. I probably would have taken La Tech at 8. Especially with Western Kentucky coming off what they did versus Middle Tennessee last week. I thought that was a surprisingly pretty good victory for them. Once they're kind of in the thick of conference play, let's see what happens next week at Jacksonville State. Again, I think Thursday is probably going to end up being a card I end up passing on, to be honest with you, Joe.
Kansas State, Oklahoma State. First and foremost, Kansas State's in their first road game, which in the past they've played well. Was it last year Oklahoma State lost 48-0 or whatever it was, 44-0? Didn't they get blown out by Kansas State a year ago? If I can remember that. So I don't love double-digit shock on the road in their first road game, and I don't think Oklahoma State's any good this year. And I've already gotten burned by Kansas State this year. I'm done on them. I feel like this is an Oklahoma State spot or nothing, Dan, but I don't think they're impressive by any means. So that's where I go on that one at the moment.
Yeah, look, this is a weird one, man. I'm still way more down on Kansas State than I think others are. The loss to Mizzou on the road. Let's see. Now they have now this is a back-to-back road spot here, Joe. Okay, now it's a Friday night. It's a Friday night and a Saturday, so it's not not totally the same, but still probably going to be a short week. I think honestly, I'd like to back Texas Tech in that situation next week. I think this week is probably a K-State side. I mean, again, if I had to be honest, I think I'd rather roll K-State here. I also think that probably an under is probably the play here. A couple defenses that really just haven't played well. But I don't know, Joe. This is going to be an interesting game, at least in my opinion, to see how good is Kansas State, because we saw them beat Troy, and that win looks better and better. The UCF win, honestly, I think is probably a little bit misleading. They probably should have beat UCF by a bigger score. Now they're off the bye. They get Oklahoma State on the road. I'm just going to pass in this situational spot here. Friday night game. K-State might be better than I think they are, and they're trending that way. So I think I kind of just got to wait and see where we are with this one right now, Joe, and pass. My numbers say Kansas State, though.
I agree. I think they're the better team, clearly. 11.5 though. Whew. All right. This game here can go fucking screw. I don't know how else to say it.
That's good.
If you're betting Nebraska and Illinois, you're fucking crazy. I don't know how else to say it. Illinois is 3.5 point favorites. I know Nebraska got smoked last week, but Illinois gives up rushing yards and gives up rushing touchdowns. And we saw this one on the opener, right? A couple of years ago. I don't even want a side. I just, for some reason, I want to fade Illinois in this spot, but I'm not betting this game, but I do think Illinois struggles against the run, and that's what Nebraska does. So I'd probably lean Nebraska, but I don't want to burn my money, so I'm out.
Yeah, I'm certainly not betting this game before half. This is, again, I think that if you look at these games, these are the type of games, especially the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday games. These are the type of games you look for halftime advantages and said spreads and situational spots, right? But if we're going to break it down, look, I hate both these teams. Neither team has a Power 5 victory. Both their wins, Illinois beat Toledo and FAU. Nebraska beat Northern Illinois and La Tech. I think Illinois' resume is obviously more impressive, but nonetheless, I mean, both teams suck. Neither team has a Power 5 victory this year. They got blown out pretty much every game they played. Purdue just blew Illinois out of the building in Purdue. So what I do think is, Nebraska off the ass kicking probably rebounds a little bit here. You would have to think. You would also think Illinois probably rebounds a little bit here. I think both teams probably figured it offensively. I actually think, so to me, the fact that this number is not in the 30s, 39 in terms of the total, circa open 44 on this one, the fact that it's not in the high 30s, I think it says over. I lean over in this game. That's my numbers made it 45, 45 and a half. I think I might play over, Joe. I think this number probably comes down a little bit more, and I think I play over. I think a couple teams are just weirdly, it's turnover central, right? So a bunch of short fields, for Altmaier, and if it's Harburg, whatever. I don't have the status of Sims, but I think we're looking at turnover central, short fields, and a couple of scores. I would look at, if you're looking for something you really want to play this game, you got nothing Friday. There are defensive props, defensive special teams touchdown scored. That's how I look at this one. It'll probably be 2-1 or higher, maybe 230-ish, something around there. So I think somewhere in that range, probably a good number to bet.
All right. This one, I hit last year. Ohio State is a dog. Ohio State, Maryland's the game. I had Maryland last year as a dog. Maryland's 5-0. Everybody, like, do I consider them one of the big three in the Big Ten? Absolutely not.
No.
But 8 times, Dan, since 2014, the two teams have met. It's gone over in all 8 games. And right now the total's at 57. The closest matchup was back in 2018. Ohio State won by 1 point. Last year, Maryland covered. They lost by 13. And now the current spread is 19.5. Yep. This is a 5-0 team on the road. It's just, I mean, would you ride the streak of just going over 8 games in a row here? Like, do you see defense in this one? And Ohio State's quarterback, I mean, if we're looking at the two quarterbacks, who do you think has been better, Tuluia or dude from Ohio State?
McCord. I mean, it's probably Tagovailoa. I also think they've had a little bit of an easier schedule, right? I mean, the hardest game that they've played, that Maryland's played so far, is at Michigan State. And remember when we talked about Maryland at the beginning of the year, I said I fucking love this team. And their win total was 6.5. I mean, sorry about that. I think one of the easier win totals of the year. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I think this team could start potentially 5-0. I think I remember distinctly saying that on the pod. I think this team could start 5-0, and they have Illinois, Northwestern, Nebraska, Rutgers still on their schedule. I mean, I think this team realistically wins 8 or 9 games this year. If Ohio State didn't have a bye coming off Notre Dame, it's a great spot to back Maryland, right? I know they're home, but still. But I think ultimately the spot I'd like to fade Ohio State next week is that game at Purdue, where they always struggle on the road at Purdue. It's an Ohio State thing. If you know Ohio State football, they just struggle at Purdue. Couldn't tell you why. There's no rhyme or reason to it. They just always do. Remember, they lost out right there a couple years ago. So look, this one's up to 20. I think it's getting a little disrespectful, a little bit. Like, Maryland's still a good team, especially offensively, and I think that they'll stay in it. I just worry that, the Buckeyes kind of show out a few things offensively. They kind of, especially after what Notre Dame did to them, they face a defense that has a little bit more of an opening, and they kind of break it open a little bit. Again, that total 57 too. Look, this one's a little bit tougher for me, Joe. I lean Maryland. Okay, it feels like a lot of points to be giving a team that I think is really, really good. It also scares me that that we're at 19, 20 points with Maryland. Like usually when you see a spread like that and it looks like wow they're getting disrespected, as I think a lot of people felt in Tennessee, South Carolina last week. Usually that goes the way of the favorite. So again, even though my numbers do say Maryland, I think I'm going to lean. I think I'm going to take a pass on this one. But yes, I do lean Maryland with the number. It's a big number. It's a pass for me on this game. I might fade Ohio State depending on the outcome of this game next week at Purdue. However,
okay, the Red River Shootout, Dan.
Yeah, Texas
at Oklahoma. Anytime Texas leaves its home field, Dan, I'm always in fade mode. Oklahoma's averaging 47 points a game this year, but Texas's defense gives up less than 20. This is a good matchup. Texas truly hasn't been tested yet because if you look at Alabama, they haven't been right. So now they got to go on the road. I faded Oklahoma last week, and I never liked the Iowa State QB on the road anyways, but I still thought maybe they'd look ahead. They didn't. I still think Texas is the better team. I think they're the better of the Big 12. I think they're the best Big 12 team. You still got to go to Oklahoma and beat them. It's 6 points. In a rivalry matchup, I don't think I want to take a team within a touchdown or less. I'm right now, I think Texas wins the game, but I'm not betting the spread. I need a little more time, but the total's 60, Dan. In these matchups, I feel like normally it goes over, and I probably should look up the history of the matchups here, but just off the bat, I don't like Texas on the road in this rivalry, and it's 6 points. Do you think it will move at all?
Yeah, so I mean, this one has had movement, Joe. This one opened around 5, I think, was the opening number at Circa. Got bet up pretty quickly to 6. I will tell you personally, I got some 7 minus 110 myself at Aces yesterday. It's 6.5 right now at Circa. I think this one we see hit 7 minus 120. I'm all over Oklahoma here. Give me the dog, PT. Yeah. So look, I'll be honest with you because I can't wait. Right? We do the podcast. It is what it is. So I'm taking Oklahoma. I think it's 6 right now on DraftKings. So I think so. I'll take 6. There's definitely better numbers out there. Definitely some 6.5s out there. No doubt about it. So you can get some 6.5s. I'm just gonna say this, Joe. I personally think that this is just it feels silly. It's a neutral site game. You know what I mean? Like neutral site, and I'm laying I get almost a touchdown with Oklahoma. I get Texas is good. Don't get me wrong. I like them. They haven't given up more than 24. They gave up 24 to Alabama. Like, let's not say that that their defense is some unbelievable defense. Like, yes, they played Kansas very well. Baylor played with their backup quarterback. Like, I'm not exactly impressed there. They were initially down the Rice. They were struggling versus Rice in that first quarter. Like, I don't know, Joe. To me, this is going to be somewhat of an offensive game. They gave up 24 to Alabama. Oklahoma's offense, especially with Gabriel, in my opinion, is significantly better. They just laid a 50 burger on Iowa State. I'm surprised where the number is on this one. I just don't quite get it. It feels too, and this is not one of those games where I look and say that's disrespectful because I'm not there yet. But what I do think is, especially if you get 7 minus 120, you should be playing that immediately. I found 7 minus 110 at Aces. But this is a play. 6 and above, this is a play. I like Oklahoma. I think they have a real chance to win this game, Joe. I just think this is kind of a little bit disrespectful to Oklahoma. We'll see what happens. I like the over, and which I know is a big number. I think it's 60 right now. I like the over, and I like Oklahoma in this game, Joe.
Yeah, I always fade Texas when they're on the road. it's like an automatic for me. And yeah, 6 points might be too many in a rivalry game. I agree.
In a neutral site. If this, I mean, this is in Texas. At least I get it. Neutral site game.
Yep. Here's another one here. LSU, Missouri, Dan. Back-to-back roadies, LSU. Dan, I've been ready for this one. And I like Missouri, man. I'm gonna ring the bell.
You're gonna ring the bell?
Yeah, I like Missouri. And here's the deal. I feel like the line's too high, personally. Missouri at home. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country, at least at stopping the run. They're one of the best defensive teams in the SEC. Yeah, I feel like the SEC doesn't even play defense anymore. Watching that Ole Miss LSU game last week, I'm ringing the bell. I like Missouri in a bound. I like Missouri to either win, cover, whatever. I think LSU in a back-to-back on the road off an emotional loss to Ole Miss. Yep, you would think it's a get-right spot. Missouri's been good. Maybe they're overrated. I'm going to hold my nose a little bit to it, but I like Missouri in the spot at home. It's an underdog that probably will go up to 7 at some point, so I'd wait on the line a little bit here. I like Missouri in this spot, and honestly, I like the under 63.5 too, but I'm going Mizzou. I'm just fading LSU in the spot.
LSU minus 6.5.
Yeah, you're the king of the back-to-back roadies. Faded.
I'm aware, but they already lost.
It's usually the second game of the back-to-back.
So, I mean, look, so Missouri, by every measure that I have, basically every statistical outlier, they're the worst top 25 team that we've had in 3 or 4 years, which is really crazy when you think about some of the top 25 teams you got in there. Struggled versus South Dakota, struggled versus mid-Tennessee. Clear look-ahead spot to Kansas State, though, right? Played well versus Kansas State, won that game. Off a spot where they shouldn't cover. They pushed the spread against Memphis. Then in a spot where they definitely shouldn't cover against Vanderbilt, they crushed Vanderbilt. This is it's a weird team, but this LSU team, again, when they faced really good talent this year, they've struggled. I mean, they lost the Ole Miss spot. I told you last week, I thought Ole Miss was the play. I like Florida State. I think I played Florida State week 1, in that spot. But I do think that if you're going to look and compare to a Missouri, what type of team is comparable to who LSU has played? The team that's most comparable to Missouri so far is Mississippi State. Now Missouri's better than Mississippi State, but they are somewhat comparable. LSU is able to move the ball up and down the field against them, and honestly, I just think that if Missouri tries to get in a shootout like they did with Kansas State. Like, Missouri has the guns to match Kansas State. They don't have the guns to match LSU. And I just think that LSU, good bounce back, get right spot against a team that I think is heavily overrated, even in Columbia. I know what Schrader has done. He's been fantastic for them this year. But quietly, Jaden Daniels, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, just over 1,700 yards already. LSU has been a very good offensive team. Missouri 5-0. People love Missouri right now. I just say pump the brakes on Missouri a little bit here. This is not a spot you want to back a team like Missouri, who I think is getting really their first true test. Again, I don't like Kansas State. I just don't. I don't think they're nearly as good as people think they are. I love LSU. I think LSU probably wins by 10+. It kind of reminds me, Joe, of the Patriots Cowboys last week, where everyone seemingly loved the Patriots in this spot. Oh, they'll keep it close. And then he just got blown the fuck out. And I don't know if it's going to be a blowout at those epic proportions, but I just think LSU 10+. I mean, this should be. I like LSU. I think it's a very good spot for LSU and a bounce back here.
I understand like fading Missouri and their schedule and all that. Like maybe they are overhyped. I get all that. LSU, though, is giving up over 30 points a game and 430 yards on the ground. Like, they're not a defensive team at all. And when they are a favorite, Dan, against ranked teams, they've lost 3 of their last 4. Like, I don't know if Brian Kelly's the answer there. I don't know if he's the answer there. And I'm holding my nose to it. And I can't believe it's Missouri, the one that I'm betting on here. But
Hey, we've been back and forth on the head-to-heads. You have definitely gotten the better of me this year. So let's see what happens.
But in this spot, though, I get it. I think Missouri's overrated too, but I don't think LSU's worth putting the money on this week. But we'll see. This is why they play the games. And if I'm Jaden Daniels, I start to think about his future a little bit if they lose. Or
My
I don't know.
My first college bet this week, LSU minus 6.5. I think it's the
Wow.
absolute bee's knees of spot here.
Rutgers, Wisconsin. Love Wisconsin at home. Whenever Wisconsin plays at home, I like Wisconsin at home. So although I don't have a play on this game, I think they can cover the 14 against Rutgers.
It's a weird number, right? I mean, if you were to initially ask someone what would you make this game, I think you'd probably say, oh, I make the game 10, 11, up to 14. 14 seems a little high for me. But I agree. I mean, this is probably a good spot. Again, when Rutgers went on the road against Michigan, it depends where you got the number in that one. Either they covered or they pushed. Some people did get lucky with Michigan minus 23.5. But for the most part, it was probably a cover or a push. And I think I think Wisconsin, when they're home, they are a different team. I mean, look what they did to Georgia Southern. That's a good group of 5 team. They blew them out. Then they blow out Purdue on the road. I think maybe they figured some things out after that Wazoo game. I do lean Wisconsin in a situational spot. I do. I think Rutgers, again, their one road game against Michigan. I think Wisconsin might put them a little bit, even worse in a spot in Camp Randall. Mordecai, I still think, really hasn't gotten right. 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. I mean, you just have to think that, Wisconsin figures it out with them at some point. I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, you would expect them to figure it out with them. We'll see. I think it's a decent spot for a get right for him.
All right, moving on. 12 o'clock Saturday. Mississippi State's 20.5 versus Western Michigan. Right, SEC versus small school. I don't know. I got nothing for you here, but I don't respect the SEC like I used to anymore. I know the top of the SEC is very strong. Everything else, though, I got nothing here, Dan.
Yeah, weird game. I think it's probably Mississippi State or nothing in this one. I mean, look, they lost 3 straight, but those 3 straight have been the LSU, South Carolina, Alabama. The game versus Arizona, I think we all know how I feel about Jaden DeLora when he plays and how good he is. And Western Michigan blows out Ball State last week, in a game that I am surprised. I think it was a good win for them. But when they have gone on the road and they face some of these better opponents, I mean, they lose 48-7 versus Syracuse, 41-10 versus Iowa, 49-31 versus Toledo. I mean, I think this is probably close to, I think Iowa and Mississippi State are probably, close in talent. I think this could be a blowout. I lean laying the points in Mississippi State here.
Okay. Moving along here. We got Toledo at UMass. Toledo, these teams have played before, being in the MAC conference. Toledo's got to go on the road and cover 20. 19. 19's the number right now. I kind of like over 59. But UMass, dude, it's like 1 week. The next week, I can't figure it. Last week, dude, come on. Arkansas State. Come on. That was a lot. I know. So, Toledo should run them too then. That's the way I look at it. It's just the number's 20. I probably go over 60 or over 59.
Yeah. I mean, look, this should be the thing. I will say, this is about to be a back-to-back-to-back for Toledo in terms of road. And so a lot of travel here coming up. To me, it's not the spot to fade Toledo, though. I just don't think so. UMass really sucked last week. I thought UMass had a really good chance to win that game coming in. And boy, did they blow. I was on UMass. I was on the over. I split them. Obviously not happy about that. I still think UMass has a chance to get 3 wins with UConn that final week, especially that game being home. But their hopes are starting to dwindle here. They need to start at least figuring some things out. I think it's a good game to start trying to figure some stuff out against a talented team and a talented quarterback in DeQuan Finn. Toledo coming off a really tough game versus Northern Illinois. I mean, that back and forth game, held on for that victory. Probably a get right game. I think they blow them out. I do. even though it's on the road. Not the travel is not concerning this week. The back-to-back-to-back travel might eventually be concerning, but we're not there yet. I lean Toledo in the points. In terms of the total, Joe, I also agree. I think I lean over. I mean, again, I do think UMass's offense is actually kind of overtaking their defense, which is surprising when you think of John Brown being the head coach there. So I do think that they'll be able to score a little bit again this week, even against that Toledo defense. And yeah, I like the over 59.
Boston College at Army. I'll say this about BC. The kid Castellanos has been pretty good. 1,000 yards throwing so far, 10 touchdowns. Only has 4 interceptions. He's run the ball well, too, with 3 touchdowns. So he's been the difference of the UCF transfer. The BC's biggest problem is stopping the run, Dan, and they're playing Army this week. Army's favorite at home. All I'll say is this is a spot for BC to get to 3-3. I mean, 3-3 compared to what they looked like early on, losing to Northern Illinois it would be a success. So I think that's a motivating factor for BC. I think they are better, but they got to stop the run on the road, and I don't know if I would bet on that.
Yeah, this opened 4 at Circa, and it was 3.5, and now it's 3. And I'm not sure I agree with the move here. BC sucks. I mean, look, Virginia's a bad football team. That's a bad football team. Now, I think they'll be good in a year or two. I like the quarterback there. I just think that he's a little bit more, low in inexperience. But BC was down big in that game and came back and found a way to win. But their 2 wins this year have been Virginia and Holy Cross. They played Florida State super competitively in a bad spot for Florida State, but they lost to Northern Illinois, got blown out at Louisville, and this is only their second road game. And now they're at Army, a team who's coming off a beatdown at Syracuse, and now they're back home. I think that at home they're a different team. They've only played at home once this year. They won 57-0 in that game. I think that this is going to be really tough. I think BC is going to struggle with the run. The triple option to me is going to be really difficult for them. Army's had a week to prepare. I just don't agree with the move on the side here. I like Army. I haven't gotten to the window with this one yet. If this drops to 2.5, I think I have to take Army. 3, I definitely lean Army. Not there yet, but I do lean that way.
Yeah, it's only for the simple fact that BC struggles at stopping the run, and that is and plus Army's at home.
Yep.
But again, if you're on the flip side of it and you're a BC backer, it's a chance for them to get right. Just might be a tough spot. How about 4-0 Marshall? Underdogs at NC State. I'm sick of watching NC State, Dan. They're on I feel like they're on our television all the time.
All the time. Yeah, I agree with that.
They're not good. They're not good. They're a decent defensive team, right? They're at home. I'd love for Marshall to knock them off. So that's where I'm at on this one. But I do think there are slightly a class better than Marshall. And I don't like Brennan Armstrong. I want to fade NC State here. I'm not going to ring the bell, but I want Marshall to win this game.
Brennan Armstrong was benched yesterday. They're going with MJ Morris, who was the quarterback last year that they had to finish up the year.
Yeah, he played a little bit last week, too, I believe.
Yeah, look, I like Morris. I think Morris can play a little bit. I mean, he's not a stud. He's not Devin Leary, right? You're not getting Leary or anything. I really initially thought Armstrong would be a good fit there. I think Armstrong is just a group of 5 quarterback. I think that's what he is. I think he can be an exciting group of 5 quarterback. I think that's what he is. Marshall, they're playing really well. Like, I don't want to take anything away from them. But again, outside of Eastern Carolina, they have really, struggled to close these games out. Barely beat Albany, held on versus Virginia Tech after being up pretty big. Held on versus Old Dominion. Now they're on the road at NC State. It does feel like a tough spot for them to be in. I think NC State played Louisville very tough last week. I was kind of impressed with what they did. Everyone really liked Louisville in that spot. It's a tough one. They got Duke on deck. It just depends. Like, will NC State overlook this Marshall team? I just don't think so. With the quarterback change and everything coming, I think it's hard to overlook that. I lean NC State here, to be perfectly frank with you, Joe. I know Marshall's been fun, and they're good. I'm not saying they're not. I just think NC State's probably the side I would have to lean if I had to choose a side here. That's the way I would go in this one. Now, we do have we missed one 12 o'clock game. It was Virginia, William, and Mary. And I will say this, Joe, I think William & Mary is a very good FCS school. They were looking ahead last week. I think there's a real chance that they beat Virginia this week. Real chance.
Well, they've been competitive. I actually read something about them this week. I saw something about them that they've been a pretty good football team. Yeah, I forget what it was, but that's a good spot if you want to take like one of these teams. Plus, Virginia's are they like quitting? Like, what is going on with both Virginia schools? What happened?
Yeah, I mean this is what happens when you fire coaches and you kind of everything out. I mean, they had a lead versus NC State, they blew it. Lead versus James Madison, they blew it. Lead versus Boston College, they blew it. I mean, you can make an argument that Virginia should be 3-2 right now. It's pretty crazy, but you really can make that argument. Instead, they're 0-5. They have William & Mary, and then they got a bye, and then the rest of their schedule at UNC, Miami, Georgia Tech, at Louisville, Duke, Virginia Tech. They might win. I mean, this might be their chance for a win this year. Virginia Tech should be a chance for a win. Maybe Georgia Tech, competitive game, but man, Virginia could be looking at a winless season if they don't start figuring it out.
All right. UTSA goes on the road against Temple. I've watched a few Temple games. I don't know if I can get UTSA at the number on the road, but I think they're the better team. Will put up points. But I don't have an edge at all in this game.
And super disappointing with Temple. They just for whatever reason cannot figure it out. I thought they really would this year. And early on, Akron, they figured out the second half, and then I'm having a hard time with them. This is probably just a game I stay away from, just in general. Honestly, again, if you're making me choose my number, say lean Temple again. But I can't go back to the window with them. I think over in this game. I think if you're looking for a play, over is the play. I do think Temple's offense at some point is going to get going. And I just think UTSA offensively, they can score. They haven't put up a ton of points this year, but they can score. We saw it in that Army game. I think they have the capability to do that when they need to. So, yeah, not there yet, but I'll lean over.
All right. And the other one was Buffalo with a comeback win. I saw you had them second half. They came back, won. They get Central Michigan as 3-point dogs at home. Ooh, do they carry that momentum into the MAC against Central Michigan this week?
No, I don't think so. Good win for them last week. I thought it was a good spot for them. I talked about on the podcast that I kind of like Buffalo. I think at the 3, and so this week I lean the other way now. I think Central Michigan, barely beats Eastern Michigan in a game that they probably should have crushed them in. Central Michigan is just better than we thought they were. They're more talented. They're a better team. The week one notwithstanding, I think they're just a better team than what they've shown. And the win at South Alabama is super impressive. I think they get right this week. I think they can beat Buffalo pretty solidly. Not there yet. It's smaller game for me. I think probably a game I end up would play second half if I was going to play it. But yeah, we'll see. Buffalo at home is still frisky at times. The way they approach, and again, I really like Cole Snyder and the way that they're still using him. I think Buffalo's offense is getting better. So Buffalo definitely a team right now on the come. And I'm just not going to get there with Central Michigan this week. There's some other stuff I like more.
All right. This is one I've been looking at. UCLA hosts Washington State. Cam Ward's the real deal, man. He's been good, but they do have to go on the road now. What's funny about UCLA to me, Dan? Usually they're known as this offensive team, right? But their defense is stout. They lost a close game to Utah. Had to go on the road and do it. Now, both teams had last week off. The history of these two teams, it's generally been one-score games, and it's been a while since Washington State's gone to UCLA and win. I think it's about Cam Ward and their offense. Can they beat UCLA on the road? And I think UCLA is going with more. I guess I don't know. I don't know who they're going to go with. I think Washington State's the better team here, but I think there's value on UCLA in the spot.
Yeah, give me Give me UCLA. So look, Wazoo's been a fun story.
We're on the same page here then. All right, cool.
Yeah. Look, Wazoo's been a fun story, right? The win at home versus Corvette against Oregon State, and a team who I think is a wildly impressive team. Really liked them last week. I didn't get to the window officially on the podcast. I bet them myself. Pretty big. But this is a great spot for UCLA. Dante Moore, I think, is very talented. Between him and Ethan Garbers, I think they'll figure it out. Utah is just a place where everyone goes to die. It doesn't matter who plays. It's a go to die spot. And then next week, guess what? I'll probably like Oregon State. If UCLA wins this week, I'll probably like Oregon State next week against them because they'll be in Corvallis, back-to-back road situation there. So I think this is a good spot for UCLA to get right, get a win versus a good Wazoo team who I just don't think has played someone, on the road. I think this is just a really tough spot for them, man. Really tough spot. They haven't played anyone on the road nearly this talented. And, it kind of reminds me of that Wisconsin game where, they beat Wisconsin. I just think that this UCLA is like Wisconsin, but this game's on the road. And I think they're more talented. Honestly, I really like UCLA. I think they get over the hump here, and I think they beat Wazoo, who again I like. Definitely better than we thought they were going to be. Right, I'll be the first one to admit that. But this is definitely UCLA, and you should be able to find 3. I think it's going to go to 3 everywhere. I would say. Oh, you know what? No, hold on. Let me pull a refresh right now, Joe. Because I think we might have a UCLA 3 on the board at DraftKings. Nope, we don't. It's 3 everywhere but DraftKings. So just wait on this one. I'll mark it at 3.5. But you'll definitely be able to find a 3 here. And I love UCLA in this spot.
Isn't this a back-to-back roadie for Washington State?
Yes, it is.
With a bye week.
Hold on. Let me see. I believe that is the. No, it's not. It's not a back-to-back road. They have Arizona after this. So, no, they got back-to-back road games at the end of the month versus Oregon and Arizona State. In fact, I think we could be looking at a Washington State team that could potentially lose the next 2. Good spot to bet Arizona next week. Circle that spot. Off of UCLA, looking ahead to Oregon, and Drayden DeLauro might be back. Good spot for Arizona in a cover situation there.
So just to be clear, when a team gets the bye week, we don't consider it back-to-back roads.
Correct.
Got it. Well, look at Alabama then. Smoked Mississippi State last week, right? Yep. On the road. Here they are on the road again at Texas A&M as 2.5-point favorites. So I ask you, Dan Lifshatz, do you have the balls to take Texas A&M in the spot?
I'm not going to PP it, but I will tell you, I've already bet Texas A&M 3.5 and 3. I think it's 2.5 right now at DraftKings. You'll find a 3 this week. Just patience is a virtue. I might add it. I think Alabama loses this game, man. I think they lose this game. I think it's a bad spot for them, and I think they're going to lose this game. I think A&M continuously shows how good they are each week. They get better and better. The Miami game, on the road. I think next week, guess what? Tennessee versus A&M coming off Alabama. Where do you think I'm going to be next week? Assuming the line is within a reasonable range, right? I think everyone can kind of predict that spot. So yeah, but I love A&M this week. Great spot for them. And I think offensively, they're better than they have been in the past. I don't know if Alabama can score with them. I don't know if they can. I think A&M is too talented offensively. At 2-0 in conference, both in the West, look out. I think A&M wins this game. Well, I'm not going to PP it because it's going to be 3. I might post it on Twitter at some point.
Dan, I'm going to tell you, just a casual college fan is going to look at Texas A&M sucks, right?
100%.
This might be how there's like Wendy's has major bag alert, major square alert.
Major square alert. So right now, just to give you an idea, because that was funny as fuck. Just to give you an idea, Right now, Alabama currently 75% of the bet, 96% of the money, and the line has moved from 4 or 3 to 2 or 3. Sorry, 4 or 3.5 to 2.5 now. So costing a big key number there. Major square alert. I love it.
Oh my God. They should make it a thing. Square alert, major
Yeah.
square alert.
I'll have
Stuck
to.
in your head all week.
I'll have to get in the production room this week.
Virginia Tech 24-point dogs at Florida State. So here's the deal. Florida State's got a horseshoe up their ass. I don't know what else to say. They're good. They're a good team, and I don't mean that by disrespect. I mean it by covering games and winning. I listen, they should probably smoke Virginia Tech. I would probably take the 24 just for the simple fact that they've battled, and this is a game where they can kind of just roll the balls out and win.
Yeah, I mean, this is after the last couple of weeks, and I know they had a bye last week. After the last couple of weeks, I think it's probably a Florida State spot, man. I mean, this is you come off the bye, you're feeling fresh. Now, they got Syracuse next week. Not an easy game, but it's a game at home. They're not looking ahead. I do think that the Syracuse spot might be decent bet there, especially with Duke being very competitive. Now it's going to depend on Riley Leonard. Are they going to look ahead to Duke without Riley Leonard? I don't know. So that could be a spot I might be concerned with. But yeah, I lean Florida State with the points this week. I think they lay it on thick versus Virginia Tech, who just frankly isn't very good.
So we got ourselves a little ACC barn burner here. North Carolina, Syracuse. We saw what happened to Syracuse last week. Now they got to go on the road to North Carolina. I think, Dan, North Carolina is a little overrated. A little. They're 8.5-point favorites here. I just don't know where Syracuse is right now, so that's why I can't bet them. But if I was to make a wager, I would probably go Syracuse. And the line's 59.5, I would probably just take the over. Even though last week they struggled to move the ball, both teams did. And I think that second half, I think you were on, right? It went under the second half last week.
Yeah, the Clemson game. Yep.
So that's what I mean. Like, does Syracuse have to play that kind of pace against North? I kind of like Syracuse in the spot. I just can't go to the window with it. But yeah, the more I look at North Carolina, I think they're just a little inflated.
Yeah, weird spot here. Syracuse is about to be on a back-to-back roadie coming off Clemson. I can't. I just can't do it. And then technically, then they have a bye, and then they play a short week at Virginia Tech. So technically, it's a back-to-back-to-back. Technically, with a short bye in between Florida State and Virginia Tech, they got the worst schedule maybe in the ACC. Clemson and then back-to-back. This just sucks. There's no way I can back Syracuse here. Just can't do it. I do think the back end of their schedule is favorable for them, but no way am I getting to that. Pass on Syracuse. I do like the over, though. I think that got to put up some points this week if you want to be at UNC. I think they'll probably be a little bit more open than they were versus Clemson. So I lean over.
Moving along, Wake Forest, Clemson off a big win. So I don't think Wake Forest is bad. 21-point dogs, dude. How do you feel about this one? I know their defense isn't great, but does this mean that Clemson's back and they're going to win by three touchdowns or more? I'm just not ready to lay that kind of chalk.
Yeah, back-to-back road game here for Wake Forest. Otherwise, that'd probably be all over Clemson. But again, it is a good situational spot for Wake Forest. Again, it's that sandwich spot between the road game at Syracuse, where we know Clemson always struggles, and they got Miami in a couple weeks. Now, they do have a bye there, so that kind of makes it a little bit obviously less valuable. But still, it's not the worst spot in the world. I'm not going to bet Wake Forest this week. Again, probably a game I'd look second half. I think it's probably one of those games to say, hey, look, I think this is a good second bet, yada, yada, yada. I think if you're looking to fade Clemson coming up here, though, they got Miami on October 21st. October 28th, after Miami, they're on a back-to-back road game, and they're at NC State, and that is prior to playing Notre Dame. So that game at NC State for Clemson, that is a fade spot right there. So again, just looking at the schedule a couple weeks, we're talking about some fade spots that we're pushing out there. So I think that's a good fade spot at Clemson. But right now, I mean, I definitely lean Wake Forest, but I just, again, the situational spot, not nearly good enough. The numbers do say Wake for me, though. say should be about 18.5, 19. 21 is, I think, is a playable number for me.
Going back to the MAC, Miami of Ohio, 10-point favorites versus Bowling Green. I guess Miami of Ohio has been hyped, putting up points. 10 points in the MAC, though, Dan. Just seems a lot to me.
Yeah. I know it seems a lot to you. I absolutely love this spot. Give me Miami, Ohio, laying the 10 points. I mean, this is one I've been waiting for this week, Joe. Okay? Miami, Ohio. You know, they play Kent State. They play them fine, whatever. They've been consistently good. Who did Bowling Green just go on the road and beat? They just went on the road and beat Georgia Tech, a Power 5 program. And again, the week before, they got their ass whooped at home by Ohio. Now they have to go back on the road. Now, again, not a far trip, but they have to go back on the road and face another conference opponent on the road. And I think a better, an opponent you can make an argument might be better, especially defensively, than Georgia Tech. I think this is going to be an extremely difficult game for Bowling Green. I love Miami, Ohio in this spot here. This is a spot where you lay it and you don't worry about the number. 10, 10.5, 11, fine. Obviously, you prefer 10. That's what it is currently on DraftKings. But I love this spot for Miami, Ohio. Lay the number. Let's roll. Give me the Miami, Ohio Hawks, Red Hawks, minus 10 this week.
And I believe it's a back-to-back roadie, right?
Yes, it is. It is a back-to-back road situational spot. And it's actually the midst of a back-to-back-to-back road situational spot, which are way more difficult for MAC for a group of 5 teams than just the back-to-backs because they're used to those. It's the back-to-back-to-backs that are killers. So to me, one of the best situational spots we're going to find this year in the MAC.
All right. Same thing. Kent State, 26-point underdogs at Ohio. Like if this is the week to bet chalk and MAC, then do it. But I can't do it. It's Kent State, and I did actually. Kent State's bad. Would you do it though, Dan? 4 touchdowns.
I mean, it seems like a lot, right? 26 is I think that's the number right now in DraftKings, right? 26? Yeah, 26. Yep, 26. Yeah, 45.5 is total. I mean, look, I think Ohio has a pretty big matchup coming up. I think that Northern Illinois game, I know they lost in conference, but I think that that's a very difficult game and a very competitive game for them, especially on the road. Somewhat of a rivalry game there, too. Kent State just isn't impressive this year. We talked about that. They might be the worst team in all college football. This one is a straight up pass for me. I have no lean. I think the numbers for me probably a little bit misleading. It just really depends on what you're going to get from Ohio. Are they going to look at? Are they not going to look at? What are we going to see there? So I think it's a pass for me.
All right, I got this one circled, and for some reason I can't get away from these Iowa teams. I don't know what it is. I can't get away from them. Iowa kind of snuck out a win last week versus Michigan State.
Sure did.
They have Wisconsin on deck. They're 2.5-point favorites against Purdue, put up 44 a week ago. Purdue's biggest problem, Dan, is defense. That's their biggest problem. They can score. The line's 2.5. I liked Purdue. Looking at it very first when the line came out, I went Purdue. This is homecoming for Iowa with Wisconsin on deck, so there could be a look ahead here because they do have to go on the road next week.
Well, to be fair, Purdue's got Ohio State next week.
There you go. I think Iowa win. I think Iowa wins, but dude, I'm telling you, I'm gonna ring it. I think Iowa wins, but I'm telling you, when I first took this one,
do you want to listen to me before you ring it? Because I think there's some things with Iowa football. Okay,
just real quick. Yes, what's going on with Cade McNamara, right? Yep. And then the other. So I originally liked Purdue off the bat. I've looked into it a little bit more. I lean Iowa, but yes, please give me more on Purdue and Iowa.
Yeah, so it sounds like both running backs are going to be out again for Iowa this week. So I would not. So I don't think they're going to have Iowa. The running backs. Cade McNamara out for the year with an ACL. That's what I've heard.
Done. So that's official.
Yeah, well, it's not official, but I've heard that from very good sources, multiple very good sources that he's gone. I think Joey Tunes put it out there. Also, our friend CT Betts may have told me something. So right now, I mean, I have some very good information on Iowa. Giving credit where credit's due. McNamara's done. So that's over. Now I watched the Iowa game. Okay, and I'll be fair here. I was on Iowa -7 last week. Okay, got the number early at FanDuel. Me, CT, and Jules all played into that. They brought in this kid, Deacon Hill, afterwards. Hill looked horrible when he came in. He got better as the game went on, and I think he's going to be okay. I think with some prep time, he'll be okay. I like Iowa this week. My concern is that if this turns into a shootout, right?
No shot.
Because Purdue, then we're going to see a lot of Deacon Hill turnovers here, and that's the case. That being said, opens 41, down to 38.5. 41, a total of 41. I lean Iowa. I'm not going to bet this one, I don't think. I still lean Iowa, but I am definitely concerned. No quarterback. Running backs are probably out this week. I would just be very careful on this one. Again, I don't think it's a look ahead for Iowa. I don't think you can look ahead past Purdue. Purdue, I don't think you can look ahead past Iowa. I think it's a big game for them. So I think that this is kind of a spot where, even though it's not a great situational spot for either team, I think both teams are kind of in similar situations. It's a complete pass for me in this game. If you like Purdue, you like the over. If you like Iowa, you probably like the under. So I'll just go with that. I think they're probably a correlated situation here.
Yeah, I had Purdue last week. I almost went back to the well this week. The Iowa stuff is weird, but it is homecoming with Wisconsin on deck. I feel like they kind of need this one. But yeah, probably one to stay away from. North Texas Navy. Dan, we had high hopes for North Texas. And Navy, woof. They're 6. I don't know if they should be 6 points versus anyone, but the fact that they're 6 points makes me think that Vegas thinks they're gonna pile up the runs on them. I have nothing on it because I still don't like Navy, but just that line makes me think Navy.
Yeah, so sharp play on North Texas the other day, and again, you saw I played South Florida second half last week against Navy, and they kicked the shit out of them. I think I don't even remember what the final score of that second half was, but if I remember correctly, I don't think it was all that competitive. So I think it was a decent bet there. So North Texas got up to 7. It opened 5, got up to 7. Big sharp play at 7. I like Navy this week, man. I do. North Texas cannot stop the run. I mean, they just can't stop it. So now we're going to get a triple option team in conference, at home in Annapolis, versus a team that struggles versus the run. I don't see it. I don't see it here, man. I don't see it at all. I don't quite understand what they're talking about. I also think this is probably an under spot to be fair. So I like under too.
Okay. Texas State, Louisiana Lafayette. Wow, that's a 1-pointer there, huh?
It is, yeah.
How's Texas State been doing? I know they started out pretty
well. They were terrible versus Nevada. I think they were down like 7. They were down big in that first half versus Nevada. Came back, found a way to win by 7, or found a way to win by 11. Last week they were up huge versus Southern Miss. Southern Miss got all the way back in the game. I think they were down like 6 points, and then Texas State scored a late touchdown. But very misleading, this Texas State team. Very misleading.
I got nothing. A lot of these games, Dan, I don't like. But that one's a 1-pointer where I feel like if you like a side, you might well want to jump on it. Like Northern Illinois, 5-point favorites on the road. Again, at Akron, who had an upset loss a week ago. The number 5, I hate it. In a way, I feel like the total of 44 is probably dead on. So yeah, I got nothing on that one either.
Yeah, so starting with Texas State, I mean, I think most people probably like the over here. It'll probably be painted, 770s by game time. I'm not going to play that. It feels a little bit too high. It feels like we're getting into a little bit of a silly range with Texas State, who I know dropped 50 last week and 35 the week before, and they're great. But remember, when they've gone on the road at times, they struggled versus UTSA. Like, it's still a Texas State team I don't love. You know, so I lean them this week, though. I do. Lafayette, still a good team, better than I thought, but I'm still down on them. So I lean Texas State there, even on the road. I just think that they're kind of putting it all together at the right situation. And then, what was the other game you talked about, Joe?
The other game was Northern Illinois at -5 on the road at Akron off their upset loss.
Yeah, I like Akron here. I like Akron in this spot. I think it's a good spot for Akron. I did not like Akron last week. I thought they kind of blew their load, so to say, against Indiana. Almost beating a Power 5 school would have been massive for them. But this week, again, I think they're back at it. I think it's a good spot for them. Northern Illinois. They have a huge game versus Ohio on deck. That's a major game, especially in conference. Oh, Northern Illinois coming off Toledo. This is a spot where you back Akron. Forget about the number. We're above that 3 number, which I think is really the important one this week. Now, are we going to get the 7 here? Maybe. It's possible, but we're already at 5. To me, you got to play the 5. So to me, I know, look, this is not about that. Just straight up, give me Akron 5. TP.
Wow.
It's a great spot for them, Joe. It's right in between Toledo and Ohio. I mean, that's about as good of a max spot as you're going to find, seriously. And it's a huge game because it's also on the road. And again, not major, but again, also a back-to-back road situation. So this is about as good of a spot as we'll see for Northern Illinois. And again, when we saw them in this situation earlier this year, they went on the road, they beat BC, they played the Southern Illinois Salukis the next week. I said on the podcast, this is a spot where they lose. They're going to lose outright. They lost outright. This is a spot where Akron wins. Akron's going to win this game, sprinkle some money line, take the +5. They're winning this game.
All right, another game I circled. It's not pretty.
We have one more
Mac. Yeah, one more Mac. Sorry, Ball State, okay. Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
Eastern Michigan 2.5, total 43. Again, I'm not in the Maction yet. Once those games happen during the week, that's when I'll be in on it. But I'm not really sure much about either. I know Eastern Michigan's hung around. Not sure what's going on with Ball State.
Yeah, Ball State's been terrible so far. This is a pass for me. I really don't know what to expect in this game. I'm not high on Chris Creighton in the Eastern Michigan team, but Ball State has given me absolutely nothing to believe in. Like the under in this game, that would be the way I would go. I think it's 43.5, 44. That's the way I would lean in this game right now. Lean under in that
one. Vanderbilt, Florida. I faded Florida last week. I had Kentucky, and we'll get to them later when they play Georgia. Vanderbilt, Missouri last week, I watched it. Like, they gave up 38 points. Vanderbilt's problem, Dan, is they give up so many points through the air. And last week they gave up 130 on the ground. Florida's going to try to run it on them, and then we'll see what happens. It's 18.5. In a way, I kind of want to back Vanderbilt. But yeah, man, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Florida off a loss. I feel like they want to just. Plus, they're at home. Usually, Florida struggles when they're at Vandy. So nothing on this one. But I originally was looking at Vanderbilt maybe in this spot. Make Mertz try to throw the ball on them. But who knows? They Vanderbilt could completely tank and get blown up by 30. So I'm off on this one.
Yeah. If you were going to back Vanderbilt, the spot was last week. Guess who they have on deck? They got Georgia. So I mean, yep. It just pretty brutal. Yeah, look, I like Florida here too. I think if we're going to back Vanderbilt, it was last week. I thought it was a good spot, Joe. They just, they suck something fierce sometimes. So, I like Florida. I think it's a good get right spot for Florida. Now they got South Carolina on deck. That's not a major look ahead game by any means. Again, there is a little bit of a rivalry there, to be perfectly fair, but I just think this is it's a Florida or nothing spot. Lay the big number with Florida. I think if it gets down to 17, I think that's probably the spot I feel comfortable playing some Florida. So we'll see if it gets down to that number.
Troy, Arkansas State. Arkansas State had its big victory last week. They probably partied all week long. I feel like Troy should annihilate them. 16.5 though. Troy just hasn't been backable, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that. I backed Troy last week. They won in a great Georgia State spot.
I agree with it. Yeah, and I was saying before last week, they actually impressed last week.
Oh, they were great last week. I thought it was a great spot for them. I was really hoping to get a better number. 17 seems big. It just does. I mean, Arkansas State, when they have faced talented teams, they've gotten blown the fuck out. So that's kind of my concern about backing Arkansas State. My number made this 19.5. It's just it's Troy or nothing, but I'm not getting to the window with Troy this week. Again, maybe second half, but nothing for me here.
So UCF Kansas is kind of interesting. Two good teams. So again, UCF is one of those teams, Dan. When I see them on the road, generally I fade them. But they are playing a competitive school. We saw what happened last time when Kansas played a competitive school, right? I want to take Kansas at home, but I just don't know. So I don't know if you got anything on this one, but just looking at what Kansas has done and what UCF has done to this point, like Jaylon Daniels has been pretty good. Only one interception so far. Timmy McClain has been okay with UCF. It's a 2.5. I kind of like the home team here, but you got anything on UCF?
I like the home team here. I do. I thought last week was the spot. We talked about it, right? UCF with Baylor in between Kansas State and Kansas. Both those games on the road. They got, they do have a bye after this game, but then they have Oklahoma afterwards. I just think this is a welcome to the conference. Now, here's my question, Joe. Do we get Kansas where they're, do we get Kansas this week in a spot where, okay, they come off Texas and, they bounce right back? Or do we get, kind of a very meh, okay Kansas team beat up off Texas? That's my biggest concern and why I haven't gotten to the window here. But there's no doubt which way I'm leaning. It's Kansas or nothing. I think I'll probably end up being on Kansas at some point.
Yeah, I actually I'm on Kansas. I just need a little bit more on that one. South Florida UAB. Now, Dan, generally UAB at home, that was the one, right? Back in the day, they're 3.5-point dogs against South Florida. I think I got nothing. I will not bet on this game, but recency used to be UAB at home in a spot. But they've been bad, Dan. I'm out.
Yeah, the Dilfer UAB team is struggling. They have one win. It's against an FCS opponent. Look, I told you, I think South Florida is good, man. This team can play a little bit. I like them versus Rice. I like them versus Navy. Now they've covered both in a row. Now they're on the road again at a UAB team. They're 3.5-point favorites. This is kind of where I say, okay, maybe we need to pump the brakes on this team a little bit. That being said, UAB has been horrible this year. They're poorly coached. Dilfer looks like he's in way over his head, Joe. I don't know if you've been watching and seeing some of the stuff that's going on at his sideline, but that guy blows up. I mean, you think I get angry at shit. Oh, boy, this guy fucking loses his mind. Now, the total's got banged up from 66 to 69.5 in this one. I think UAB puts on some points this week. I think it's an offensive game. 3.5, I lean UAB. 3, I lean South Florida. Simple as that. No point for me.
All right, I had this one lined up this week. So UConn Rice, Dan. I watched that. So it's funny. UConn, they lost. It was bad.
Yep.
They were up 17-0, lost.
I had Utah State. I had Utah State second half.
Yeah, I saw that. And they blew doors second half. I lean over 50. So we can ring the bell at 50 if you want. Over 50. Ding ding.
Okay.
Hold
on one second. There you go. Yep. Over 50.
So I'm going total on this. I'm going total. I think UConn's going to try to come back. I mean, that was a devastating loss. But Rice is a beatable opponent for them. I think Rice wins this game. I think JT Daniels puts up points. I think it's going to be a back and forth like Utah State was a week ago. But in the end, I think Rice is probably going to come out and win the game. I don't like the 10 points, though. I see this more like a 33-28 kind of, you know what I mean? Like that kind of game here. So that's why I'm going over the 50 in this one.
We just have to start asking ourselves, Joe, what if UConn's going to really win a game this year? I mean, look at the schedule. Rice this week, I like Rice. I think they win this game. South Florida at home next week, I think that's a winnable game for them, but they're going to have to play really well offensively. Then they got back-to-back road games in a short week, BC and Tennessee. I mean, BC maybe, Tennessee no chance. And they're at James Madison. I think James Madison's one of the elite group of 5 teams now. Then they got Sacred Heart and UMass, so they should beat Sacred Heart. Are they going to beat UMass? I mean, UConn really might be fucked here. I mean, there's no chance they're going bowling. They might be fucked. The season's over, it feels like already. My question is, does Rice, because this is not a conference game, do they give a shit? Do they care about this game, Joe? Because they got Tulsa on deck, big conference game. Then they got Tulane and SMU, and then UTSA. I mean, they got a big, important schedule coming up, and they're going to be competitive in the conference this year. So I know they're 1-1 in conference. They lost to South Florida in that game. I just wonder if maybe this is a spot where they just don't take it too seriously, right? Maybe they just don't take UConn seriously. They don't care about it. So I don't know. Let's see. Interesting spot here. I have no idea what to expect in this game. Absolutely not.
Tulsa, that's why I went over, Dan. I just think both teams are going to score, and then in the end, Rice will probably win.
I got no idea.
Yeah. Tulsa, Florida Atlantic. Oof. Gross. Gross. I got nothing on this game.
So Florida Atlantic's quarterback, Casey Thompson, the Texas transfer tore his ACL, so he's out for the year. But they do have Daniel Richardson. If you remember, he's the former Central Michigan quarterback. I thought he should be a starter at least in a good group of 5 school. I think he's a very good player. So I don't think the downgrade is nearly as much as other people do. I know Florida Atlantic has really struggled this year. I know Tulsa's played well at times. I like FAU in this spot. I think it might be maybe one of the only ones who likes FAU in this spot. I don't know. Again, not going to PP it, not going to get to the window with it just yet. But I think it's a half decent spot for Florida Atlantic. Open 3 up to 4. If it gets back down to 3, I think I can see myself with some Florida Atlantic here. I think Tulsa's mightily overrated. I just don't think they're good. They got lucky versus that Temple side. I lean FAU with the points here.
Okay. Colorado, Arizona State, Dan. Off of pure just like between the two teams, I think Colorado's the better team. But we know how Vegas is with the line. So I haven't really forecasted a line on this one. Colorado off USC going on the road after a home game. I don't know who Colorado has next. So we should probably look that up. Colorado's schedule, right?
They have Stanford next.
Okay. All right. Fine. They can win that game. And Arizona State's been competitive, but they suck. Just the 4.5, Dan, like this, is this to get money on Colorado? Why does this seem square as well? Is it? But Colorado's got to go on the road, which we've already seen that struggle, right?
Yeah, this is a really bad spot to back Colorado in. Okay, last week was a great spot, I thought, to back them in. They rewarded me and Joe. This is a terrible spot. Off Oregon and USC. In a game, they finally put up 41. They figured some things out second half. Now they have to go on the road to Tempe. Tough place to play, regardless of how you feel about it. It's a tough place to go to. Okay, and they face a team that, again, it depends. It depends on what they're going to do offensively. Now, they're probably not going to have their quarterback this week. It's probably going to be Bouger or whatever again, Trenton Bouger, who I thought was really good last week, just didn't throw for a touchdown. But, had a pretty good game. I haven't got to watch it yet, so I'm kind of interested in watching it because I didn't get to see it. But, not a great spot for Arizona State either. They have a bye after this week, but they're coming off Cal. At home, they should cover this game. They should cover this game, but they haven't been great at home. They lost to Oklahoma State in a spot they should have won. They got shut out by Fresno. They did cover versus USC. To me, it's Arizona State or nothing. I also look at the under in this game. This feels like a game, again, I think is just a little bit of an under. So
yeah, so yeah, you're off on Arizona State. You feel like the line's a little too, and I don't want to say inflated, but it's just not a good spot for Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bad spot. I mean, coming off Oregon, USC, I think they're the more talented team, but this should probably be like more like 2.5, 3. Again, I like Arizona State here. I think there's better spots, but if I'm betting this game, it certainly wouldn't be Colorado in this situation. No.
Yeah, it's just you would think that they're bouncing back. I can see this one being again the biggest handle of the week with all the money on Colorado based off Arizona State struggles. Right? It's all there. Wow, that's going to be another square alert that we got right there. All right, yeah. Kentucky, Georgia. Let's talk it out. Georgia can't cover spreads. Kentucky just beat Florida. Now they got to go on the road. So I think Kentucky's defense is better than most people think. At times, Dan, Devin Leary looks like a second round, third round pick in the NFL, and then at times he's not accurate at all. Georgia's the top of the class, right? They're the top of the class. 14.5 is the number. So I respect Kentucky. I like Kentucky. Georgia just needs to win games, Dan. And so as much as I'm not betting it, and who's Kentucky have next? Or Georgia? I didn't even look.
I don't think I'll look now. I don't think either of them have a big matchup on deck. Oh, Kentucky has Missouri. I guess it's an important game, and Georgia has Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Kentucky and Missouri is kind of a little. All right. Is Georgia going to cover a spread? Are they going to cover a spread? That's where I start with that one. Kentucky's good. Are they Georgia good? I just don't think so.
Yeah. So to me, Joe, again, these are the type of spots you look for to bet. Georgia minus 14.5. You know how this works by now. Okay. They play a game last week. We know I told you it was CT loved them last week. And I was like, CT, this is a terrible spot for Georgia. They got Kentucky on deck. They're already focusing on that game. All they want to do is go into Auburn, find a way to win. That's exactly what they did. They held on. They found a way to win. Okay. Now they get to face a team that's seriously competing with them in the East. This is a serious game in the East. Now, if you're looking for a spot to fade Georgia moving forward, I think Florida, that game 10-28, I think that's a great fade spot, in my opinion. So, at least to me, because after that, they got Missouri, Ole Miss, and at Tennessee. So I think that's a great fade spot. But this is a great backing spot. You back the team. Everyone likes Kentucky. They're 5-0. Everyone's super high. No way they should be doing this. I like Kentucky. We bet the over on Kentucky at the beginning of the year and for the win total. But who has Kentucky played? Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vanderbilt, Florida. I mean, let's just not get too excited here, guys. They played fucking no one. Now they're facing Georgia, who really has kind of had to just get by and win. Now they get to put a boot in the ass of a team that they need to beat in order to continue to survive and advance an undefeated season. This is the spot to back Georgia. This is their first cover of the year. They're spanking Kentucky this week, PP.
South Alabama didn't do well last week. 12-point favorites this week versus Louisiana Monroe. I just don't understand it. You go on the road. I know the teams aren't great historically, but is this a spot to go after South Alabama? I mean, I guess they are off a loss, right, Dan? So maybe that's the play here.
They are, but I'm just really down on the South Bama team, man. Yeah. I thought last week was a good week to back them. Good spot at JMU, conference opponent, tough game, need to win that game. And they really were never competitive. I think the score is misleading. I think James Madison blew them out even worse than the score. This Monroe team is frisky. They continuously play teams tough. App State, they lost by 1 point in a game where I really thought App State might just, completely dominate them. Nope. Good spot for you, Monroe. I kind of like Monroe here. I'm not betting it. I kind of like Monroe. I just think too many points in another spot. Carter Bradley has really regressed for South Alabama. They might need to look at another quarterback. He just doesn't seem to have it this year, Joe. Just doesn't seem to have it.
Yeah. Old Dominion Southern Miss. Southern Miss only 1.5 at home. Is this a spot for Old Dominion?
I think it's a spot for Southern Miss.
Okay.
Old Dominion coming off that road game at Marshall, big game, beat up. Now they're back on the road, at Southern Miss. And Southern Miss in that game versus Texas State got close. They're playing well. They just haven't fully put it together. Lost to Arkansas State on the road at 7. They put it together that second half versus Texas State. I think that trend continues. I lean Old Dominion I lean Southern Miss this week.
All right. And then, all right, Notre Dame, Louisville. First off the bat, Notre Dame's on a back-to-back with USC on deck. They snuck out a win last week at Duke.
Yep.
So, again, if you want to bet Notre Dame, they got USC on deck. Is it? So, I mean, is this a fade? Because, Dan, I'll give you the flip side. Take that out of it. Louisville, since their early hiccup in week 1, first half, they've been pretty good. They battle back second half. They're a good second half team. I don't think they can beat Notre Dame, man. But again, it's got to be about the number, right? 6.5. So it's probably a fade spot for Notre Dame. My humble opinion is I think Louisville's about to get got. And I think Notre Dame's the team to do it. But it kind of sucks that USC's on deck.
I just disagree with you. I think Louisville has a real legitimate claim to win this game. Again, that Duke game, dude, the final score is misleading in that game, Joe. You watched the game, right?
I did. Listen, okay. Duke's coach should have never punted that ball.
I agree. So they don't punt the ball. They probably win that game, Joe, or at least they have a damn good shot of it. So this is now it's off Ohio State, back-to-back road, and USC on deck. There is no better spot in any college football all season, Joe. What are you talking about?
Oh, I get you. Dude,
of the season.
I agree with you. Spot-wise, Dan, I'm telling you, it's right there. It's right there. I have backed Louisville, and I think they're going to lose this week. I think they're going to. But again, the spot screams everything else.
They might lose. If they lose, it will be a 1 to 3 point game. Louisville 6.5, easy. This is as good as a spot as you're gonna get all fucking year. And honestly, if you're being serious, you wait. This one we got the 7. There were 7s yesterday. Pop back to 6.5. Find a 7. You'll find a 7. I found a 7. Find a 7 in this one. You'll find one. Louisville wins this game. Louisville's going to win this fucking game. Telling you right now, Notre Dame is going to lose. They got USC on deck. They almost lost last week. They shouldn't have beat. They should have probably beat Ohio State. I watched the game again. The second time I was like, no, Ohio State should have won. No, I'm wrong. I'm probably just being a little too biased. I think Notre Dame probably should have won that game. Regardless, Notre Dame really, really good at home. Really, really not good on the road. This is a spot they shouldn't win. If Riley Leonard doesn't get hurt, and Duke's coach doesn't do stupid shit, they probably don't even win last week. Louisville, give it to me.
All right, and again, this Notre Dame back to back, won the first, lose the second. USC next week, it's there. It's a recipe of success. Dan, last week I took Louisville -3. It was 3.5. I think it was 4. Went to 3, and I had them 3. Obviously, it hit, but at some point, I think they're going to get good. So you might be right. Maybe it goes to 7, and Louisville loses by 4, and Notre Dame doesn't cover. I'm with you. How about Michigan off their cover last week against Minnesota? I know you had Minnesota last week.
I did, yeah.
Minnesota almost 20-point underdog at home. It's that quarterback that I don't like from Minnesota, man. Just don't like him.
He was good last week, though. He really was. I thought he played probably his best game that he's played so far. I mean, This one sucks, man. It's again, this is not a spot I'm looking to bet. Like again, I think if you're looking to fade Michigan, there's a couple spots coming up in a couple weeks. November 4th, Purdue in between road games for at Michigan State and then at Penn State, and then Maryland on the back-to-back of a road spot in between Penn State and Ohio State. That might be a better spot than this one. That might be the worst spot in the whole season. That spot in between Penn State and Ohio State, and on back-to-back road games, and the second one at Maryland. That's brutal. So look, I'm not going to bet it this week. I still think Michigan, when they need to put their foot down and need to win a game, they can. It's a back-to-back road game. It's not a good spot. I'm certainly not out here advocating, hey, let's back Michigan this week. But I thought they were the nuts last week. Didn't bet them because I kind of pussied out because of the back-to-back spots. But I think this is probably Minnesota. I'm not batting it though. I'm not betting it.
All right. And what was the other game that I just saw? Oh, Arkansas, Ole Miss. So Arkansas has Alabama on deck. Ole Miss off a win. They're 11.5. Dude, I'm so down on Arkansas this year. But could this be a spot to? I mean, Ole Miss lost, snuck out a win last week. They're so inconsistent, Jekyll and Hyde. And again, I think Arkansas normally plays better at home, but they've struggled against the likes of BYU, etc. I can't understand Arkansas or Ole Miss at this point.
I mean, I like Arkansas, but I'm not getting there. There's too many good spots this week. They're on the back-to-back road. They got Alabama next week. I can't do it. So passing on Arkansas for now. It's not a bad spot. Arkansas offensively, to me, just they're right there, right? 31, 22. They're putting up points. Ole Miss, their one loss is Alabama. I don't know. Pass. It's a pass. It's simple as that. Just don't get sucked in by this game.
All right. Miami, Georgia Tech. Miami is 20.5. They've been good. Maybe the U is back. But Dan, I've watched Georgia Tech. I've liked what I've seen. I think they're getting better. Their defense, is piecing it together. But the simple fact that Miami has North Carolina next week, give me Georgia Tech plus the 20.5, and wait if you can get it at 21 or more. But give me Georgia Tech plus 20.5 today.
It's 21, Joe. It literally just moved to 21. There you go.
21.
There you go. I agree. I agree with the spot. I agree with the spot wholeheartedly, Joe. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Arizona spot you played last week. Now, obviously, Georgia Tech doesn't lose a guy like Jaden Delora, but they're coming off a loss outright to Bowling Green. Clearly looked ahead to Miami, which is a clear ace. And by the way, you were on Bowling Green last week, so kudos to you. Props to you for that call. I said I like Bowling Green, but I didn't think they were winning that game outright. It's a great spot, Joe. I mean, they are on the road. A little bit concerning, but Miami has got UNC on deck, then Clemson after that, and UNC's on the road. Definitely a look-ahead spot here. This feels like too big. Now, they are off a bye, which is why I didn't end up betting them here because they had a little bit of time to prep. But if I'm off the bye, I'm prepping for UNC. I'm prepping for Clemson. I'm prepping for those other teams. I'm not prepping for Georgia Tech. So I still think it's still a reasonable spot. And yeah, 21 Georgia Tech. I lean that way too.
Fresno, Wyoming. Now, is this I'm trying to remember. Fresno was 24-point favorites last week. Now they're 5.5 on the road versus a Wyoming team that's kind of covered the number, Dan. So this might be a Wyoming spot considering Fresno from last week in that dreaded number of 5.5. But Fresno has been impressive.
Yeah, they have been. I actually found a Wyoming 7 yesterday. I bet it. There's a good chance I'm going to buy off of it, to be frank with you. I don't know what to do here. This is a very confused game for me. Two very different styles of teams. Fresno struggling versus, the likes of Nevada last week. It's a conference game, but still struggling there. Meanwhile, Wyoming, a good spot after the App State game. I took them over, I think, second half last week. That won. But, they got a very different approach coming up. Again, they only have one loss this year, that Texas loss. I think people are probably overrating. I think both teams are probably similarly a little bit overrated right now. It's a pass for me. Wyoming at 7. I think you have to bet. I think anything below that, I think you probably got to look Fresno in this spot. They're probably being a little bit devalued, even in Laramie. I know it's a tough place to play, but yeah, I think I'll lean Wyoming. I think I'll lean Fresno 5.5.
All right, and so Boise State, dude, they had the back-to-back roads. They lost last week. They're now back at home. San Jose State has to cover one of these on the road at some point. But again, Boise off a loss at home, they just play better. The number is 9.5, but I do feel like San Jose State has to cover one of these.
I mean, yeah, it's a weird game. I mean, I agree. I think it's probably San Jose State. This feels like a little bit too much. Similar teams. Now, Boise State sounds like they're going to play both quarterbacks this week. It's going to be Taylor Green and Maddox Madsen. So I think they're going to probably do a little bit of a quarterback system. Now, again, when you have two quarterbacks, you really have no quarterbacks. And so, that old saying, San Jose State surprisingly they just have a very, very tough schedule. And I just thought they just kind of blew it in Air Force. They were playing very well in that game. They were leading. Maybe they're able to pick it up this week versus Boise. It's a pass for me. Second half type of look for a game like that.
All right, and TCU, Iowa State. Iowa State's off that loss, but they're at home. TCU 6.5 on the road. I think TCU's the better team personally, but I just think Iowa State and that quarterback plays better at home. I want to back them as a home dog, but TCU kind of needs this win, but they don't have to cover. So that's what I mean. Like, I think Iowa State can cover. TCU can win. I'm just not backing a side on this one.
Yeah, I don't think TCU is very good. Not to mention TCU's only second true road game, and its first one in conference. Iowa State coming off Oklahoma. I thought that score is a little bit misleading. They played Oklahoma pretty tough. Second half just kind of got a little bit away from them, but they played tough. They're not good. Don't get me wrong, but they're not terrible. I lean Iowa State with the points here.
All right, and all right, yeah, I think I'm on that same page. So Baylor off an emotional win, comeback win,
big one.
1-point favorite versus Texas Tech. Texas, I hate Texas Tech. I don't know what the hell's going on with them. So in a way, I feel like Baylor kind of rallies now and they go on a little run here. I don't know. It's 1 point. I kind of want to root for Baylor in this one. Is there value in Texas Tech here?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with this one, man. To be perfectly frank with you, like I think Texas Tech is the side. I don't know. I initially liked Texas Tech. I still do. Definitely probably going to be the square side, but I just think that they're probably the side this week. It's a game I want nothing to do with. Maybe our friend CT Betts will have some good information on Baylor this week, but for me, it's a pass.
Hang on. And then we have Utah State, Colorado State. We saw what happened with Utah State. They're at home. I mean, what's the deal with Colorado State? Like, we saw them against Colorado, right? So, is that why the line is where it's at? So, I don't know who the better team is, Dan. I just don't know.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you. I think this one is really, really tough. I think Colorado State's probably going to get a little bit of, credit for, their comeback win in Mid-Tennessee State and then what they did in Colorado, that second half of that game. Utah State, again, they really haven't been terrible. They played Iowa tough. Iowa's fully healthy. They blew out Idaho State. They lost to Air Force. I backed Air Force. This is a bad spot for them there. They played James Madison. I backed them in that spot. They lost there. They came all the way back last week. It's very tough to know exactly how to feel about these teams. I keep trying to upgrade and downgrade appropriately, but I'm having a hard time. I made Colorado State, -1. I don't think I'm going to play this game. I don't think I would have played it even with Colorado State a dog. I just think that this is probably a type of game you just lay off. I mean, look, a good comeback win for Utah State. Colorado State probably still a little overvalued, even by me in the market. I think this is just a straight up pass and move on.
Oregon State, Cal. So Dan, talk me off it, but I like Cal here at the 9.5 at home. I've seen Oregon State, and I had them last week. And you know, they had that tough loss versus Washington State. They bounced back last week. Now they got to go on the road to Cal, that's playing pretty well. I want the 9.5. Can I get it to 10, please? But I know Oregon State's the better team. I know they are. I'm going to take Cal to cover to stay within 10. Give me the 9.5 for Cal.
There you go. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I lean the 9.5 there. You know, Cal has shown the ability to have some offensive capabilities at times. It's the question of how good is the Beavers defense this week? Do we see a bit of a letdown after how well they played last week? If you know, are they going to let down just a little bit? If they do, I think that's a bad sign. You know, I think Cal will be able to put up a little bit on them again. Offensively, they've been okay at times. They put up 32 in Washington, 24 in Arizona State, 58 in North Texas. It just depends on how they play offensively. UCLA on deck for Oregon State. Pretty big game for them there. Could be a one-score game. Probably not going to get to the window with it, but I lean Cal as well. And the fact that it's not 10 probably does get you to probably does say, hey, probably a bit of a Cal game.
Finally, Arizona USC. I mean, we faded USC last week. They're 21.5 versus Arizona, who covered against Washington a week ago at home. Now they go on the road. Notre Dame's on deck, Dan. Is it an automatic fade with USC here? Or do they take care of business against Arizona and then have Notre Dame next week?
I mean, I think it's just a bad spot for both teams, right? Arizona coming off that Washington cover, that late night Pac-12 game, and meanwhile USC probably looking ahead to Notre Dame and coming off Colorado in a game that they really gave them a competitive second half. I think it's a pass for me. Back-to-back road games for Arizona. Again, we've gone through every game. There's a lot of spots this week. This is not the worst spot, but I think we already took Arizona. You got Arizona, or we got Arizona last week. What I think, you know, we look to back them again, maybe in a week or two, maybe that Oregon State game or something. But I think this week we just kind of stay off it. And maybe again, everyone's playing overs in USC, over. I think maybe look under. Open 75 out down to 72. Maybe we look a little bit under. Maybe if that number gets back up, maybe we'd look at some under there. That would be the way I lean.
All right, I think that's it. You got any FCS for us, Dan?
Nothing. I got nothing right now. I'm gonna I'm gonna go home, go back to work, and deal with the fallout from Toucher and Rich. Then no, I'm just kidding.
All right. Well, we'll leave on that note.
Cool.
We're on a streak, everybody. We're on a streak. Let's see how it goes into this.
We had a good week last week.
Well, no, I think what's important about this podcast is we talk every game, but the lines do move. So,
yep.
Hey, we gave you the insight, the information. Make your own decisions. That's just kind of the way I look at it. And that Iowa Purdue game, man, that one's scratch. I'm still stuck on that one, Dan. I'm like still thinking about it in my head. All right, I gotta go. You gotta go. We're done. We're back Wednesday night, I believe, to do our NFL podcast. We'll have everything ready to go for Thursday football and into another week. He's Dan Lifshatz. I'm Joe Murray. There's another edition of the Over Under Podcast.
Who you got? Good luck.